today because of stupid. So, and stupid, I mean Microsoft, not, my buddy here.
Well, I hope I'm not stupid, but
No, you're not stupid. You're just making really interesting bagels.
yes, I
Five,
have.
five of them.
Well, I mean, I have two full batches and one. So basically, I have like everything divvied out in half batches, pretty much. But half of one full batch is going to be getting treatment so that it's one flavor, and then the other half is another flavor. And then I have a full thing of what I'm calling spinach overload bagels. It's basically spinach, sun-dried tomato, garlic, rosemary, and toasted onion.
So what you need to do is make a whole bunch of bagels in the shape of clone troopers helmets, and then call them the Bad Batch.
We should clarify for the audience that Guy does occasionally benefit from the processing of said bagels.
Of course I do. I totally do. This is like the bestest. When he starts cooking bagels, I'm like, woo! Although I'm not always expecting that I'm going to be involved, but sometimes I am.
Yeah.
So I had sort of a strange realization this morning. I had an argument with a buddy a couple of weeks ago that ended up being like a shouting match at some point. We were watching a Prince video from like 1989 or 88 or something. And in the video, Prince was wearing some kind of outfit that allowed them to key in drawings. So he was having these drawings of like clouds and stuff passing through him and through the set and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my friend said, I think they drew on the film. And I said, no, they just used a green screen. And he said, no, they didn't. They didn't use a green screen. And I said, yeah, they used a green screen. They just covered everything in green and then keyed it out. And he was like, no, they didn't do that. And we went on for like 20 minutes on this argument. And the crux of it was he saw a shot where Prince was wearing a blue jacket with clouds on it. And the clouds never keyed out. The drawing behind did. And so he didn't realize that they had used a blue green screen.
Yeah. Which is,
but the term in television has always been green screen.
Right.
And so he was getting hooked up on the word green because nothing was green on that set. Everything was blue on that set. And then they keyed the blue out. Not a problem. But I got into this argument. And then finally, my buddy's wife figured out what was kind of going on. And she said, do you mean that maybe they had a blue key that they were using to color out? And he was like, yeah, that's exactly it. And I was like, so I was right this entire time. And he's like, no, you weren't. And we literally argued all the way home about this to the point where I was yelling at him. And it turns out that one of the problems is, so understand that I used to work in television. Yeah. So green screens were a thing. I mean, I was just all the time. You go, the weather station is all green screens. And stuff like that. I used to work he's a welder. But I'm noticing this happens more and more. Because at one point in time, my friend said, I think I would trust the guy who worked in television. He goes, yeah, but he's wrong. And I realize that part of this is people now are starting to see, I think, the nuts and bolts of how things work. And they start realizing that we're all humans and we all make stupid screw ups because we're all just like weird, like calling chroma keys, which is their technical name, green screens, which is not a very accurate name because they could either be blue or green, depending on what color the actors are wearing on set. So it's misleading. I mean, but we still call blue ones green screens because we're idiots.
Well, it's not. It's not that you're idiots. It's just the technology was developed. It was developed to be based off of the color green originally.
Well, it's actually, yes. It
And,
doesn't. It was originally blue, but people with blue eyes would get their eyes disappear. So they picked this obnoxious shade of green, which nobody actually had in their eyes or would wear on clothes, generally speaking. So that's really you're exactly right. You're exactly right. It was blue at one point in time. Perfect for filming Prince. Prince does not have blue eyes, so it's not an issue. So but the point really, yes, you're absolutely right. It evolved. But the point that I'm kind of getting at is I think we're starting to see now with the wave of technology, we're starting to see more of how things work. We understand now how scientists works and scientists work in vaccine labs, and we're starting to see how scientists are working in virology and things like that, because they're posting all their stuff out on Twitter and they're posting all their stuff out on Facebook. And it's just like whenever I'm talking and I say green screen, he's like, well, you're obviously wrong because it's blue. Well, yeah, but you don't understand that we're all goofy and stupid, and we even call blue screens green screens now because we're really dense. And it has nothing to do with whether we actually know what we're doing on the technology. It just has something to do with the fact that humans are humans and we mislabeled it. And it's not a problem, but he took the fact that it was mislabeled as proof that it was wrong, that it was a lie, that it was a charlatan. And I'm noticing that's happening more. You see, somebody has something wrong, some aspect is incorrect because of a naming convention or something dense, and they go on and think that it's a lie. I'm noticing that happens a lot more.
Okay, so someone did one of those TikToks where it's like unpopular opinion TikToks.
Sure.
And someone basically made a really excellent point at this. Now, granted, this is for people, like, before I state this is not my video, and I don't know if I'm repeating it correctly. It's fair warning. But basically, he was talking about on how we've had a societal shift, and if you are part of our society shift that is for like more of a left-sided or leftist mindset, those spaces seem to be more actively willing to write you off for things that are so trivial, and it's like basically your opinion, even if you give the correct amount of facts and everything, basically you're wrong no matter what they do, and they will actively try to make sure that everyone knows that you are wrong and they were right.
Yeah, this guy's my only conservative friend. The thing is, I'm discovering about that particular thing, that's true on both sides. There's a shift. It has nothing to do with left or right.
Yeah, no. But
as in, I'm seeing a group of people on both sides.
Yeah, he used the left because that's what he belonged to. He did have a disclaimer,
right? Because that seems more like.
Well, he also had a disclaimer that this is not. Like, he also had a disclaimer that this does not apply to LGBT, like transphobia, homophobia, or anything like that. This is like, these are specific, like, and yes, and he also points out that the right also has this as well. So
yeah,
I didn't say that. So like I said, these aren't my words. I'm trying to remember the correct.
I know, but I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, short of the people on the left aspect of what you just said, I think we were saying the same thing.
Yeah.
That there's a group of people, an aspect of people who are now willing to, they're so dedicated to being correct that they are willing to deny anything.
They are also willing to basically take you down and badmouth in any way whatsoever. And it's a very telling personality trait. If you're willing to do that to a friend, what are you willing to do to a stranger?
Oh yeah.
Messages from Bill.
I think the problem is also and I don't know when it happened, but at some point we were taught that there are facts, and facts are unchanging, and they'll always be that way. When we have somehow forgotten that, whether it be science or just any kind of study, that things evolve over time and change. What we know now will not be true in the future, just as what we know now invalidated things we learned previously. So,
Yeah, I feel like we also have sort of. I agree completely with that, and I feel like I get either that used against me or you used to justify something I say
Yeah.
from the same person. Like they'll start with, "But you said yesterday that this was the fact," and then the next day it'll be like, "But you said yesterday that the facts change," and it's like, which way do you want me to go to win this argument?
yeah. And
Like,
the
you know,
thing, we try to, and this even happens in the political realm as well, as we try to legislate on what we know today without thinking about that this might not be true tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, and it's because that it's a I don't know if it's a global mindset, but certainly in our country, it's a mindset of whatever true is today is true forever.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we have to be a little bit more malleable than that in our thought processes.
I also feel like legislation has been always band-aid oriented and not cure oriented. It's oh gosh, Pepper has been making way too many bagels, so we'll ban bagels.
Mhm.
But we don't actually like evaluate why was Pepper making too many bagels. We instead just ban the bagels, and you're like,
Right.
why did you do that?
So we start a people underground?
Yeah, you have to start your bagel underground now. Oh, you know what? Underground bagels sounds like actually a pretty good name.
I
I'm
think
just saying.
Underground bagel sounds like an interesting bagel shop that's like run by
Right.
hipsters.
I think
Totally does.
another problem in that same realm is when we talk about subject. I feel like maybe in the past this may have been more true, though I couldn't really validate that. Is when we cite something as being, might state it in such a way as it's factual. I feel like in the past it may have been that we understood that that was the current state of our knowledge and accepted that, it's still an ongoing thing. But now when we have discussions and we state something in such a way as it might be construed as factual, that we're not considering that malleableness of it anymore. We're like, you said that, and so now that is in concrete, and you did not mean it as though it was something that could change. You meant it as like that was it. And it's like we don't have that in our language or our understanding of communication. So
I think you're onto something because I have been seeing something similar, and I've actually been very upset with the Trekkies for this problem. They'll jump into a thread and say Discovery sucks. Discovery is horrible. Discovery is the worst Star Trek. Discovery ruined canon. And what happens is I have recently seen a couple of people posting in there going, I just watched Discovery for the first time and it's really good. And I didn't know that because everybody hated it so much. I just decided not to watch it. And I realized that people are now starting to act on this because Trekkies are getting in there and they won't say, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They don't use the verbiage.
Mm-hmm.
They just use oh, well, Discovery is useless, which sounds like, 9 out of 10 Trekkies all believe that Discovery is the worst Star Trek that's ever occurred, so you might as well not watch it. As opposed to me saying, if I were to say, oh, I don't like Discovery in my personal opinion, that sounds like just me, I don't like Discovery, And I think we've got a language shift that goes that way too, because I don't think anybody says, in my opinion, we should do X, Y, or Z. We say we should do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, I don't.
Morning,
That's
Brett.
the thing is, I don't think we used to say, in my opinion. I think it was inherently when you talk, we used to consider that anything you said was always your opinion.
Right.
But now we consider what you say is like you're speaking for some,
group
and opinion, that you say that you're reciting from that, and it's like you need to remember anything anyone says is their opinion.
I think you're onto something. I think that there's something here that we're really working on, because that sounds right. I mean, I think you're right. There's been a shift in perception.
Yeah.
And what happens is, in making everybody an authority, it effectively made no one an authority.
What are you talking about? But everyone got trophies when they were kids.
The other problem that I see,
I don't know what that is.
Participation trophy.
I know, but I don't know where that's connected. But okay, let's what the other thing, Bill? Yes.
The other side of that is now, because we don't have that implicit opinion part of our communication. Now, when you make the extra effort to say "in my opinion," or like I'm very qualitative of my speech, even in this conversation.
Yes.
That is now used against you, like you are uncertain about the things you are saying, therefore they can all be invalidated. So it's like when you make the extra effort to say, this is my opinion, or this is something I can't prove, or, this might be common opinion but could change, it is used then to invalidate everything you said. So you're caught in this catch-22 because that implicit part of the conversation is gone.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that, I think that we've got aspects of this that are definitely hitting our society pretty hard. But it is frustrating in the instance of this, the discussion I was having with my friend. I was an expert on this. And rather than saying, that doesn't fit because the guy wasn't wearing green, at which time I would have said, oh, yeah, well, we call blue screens and green screens the same thing. It's chroma keys, but we keep calling them chroma keys because we're dumb. And that would have diffused it right there. But I think even to this day, he still thinks he was right and I was an idiot because of that. And I'm like, if you'd asked, I would have told you that we just have a misnomer name for it. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning. And by the way, Brent, sarcasm is very hard to get for texting.
I have no idea what Brent's talking about. So whatever it is, Brent, you didn't
offend
me.
He's talking about. That's all that matters.
Okay. You didn't offend me, Brent, so you're good. I mean, we're making snarky comments about Star Wars.
Man, we need to get you a new chair.
I know that chair sounds horrible.
It sounded like
Gary. It's good to see you this morning. Happy Friday.
It's definitely a Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the participation trophies, by the way, was a comment alluding to the fact of participation trophies started in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yep.
And started telling, and parents around that time started telling kids that they're all special. No one's more special than the other person. And it's kind of led to a very specific type of archetype of people who
Well, we have for 5 p.m. right? We have a problem with our society all across the board with, and I feel like this is indicative of our society, probably Australian society and a few others that are having the same kind of problem, which is we're being sort of taught that we are unique and special. And that's fine. You can be unique and special, but we also sort of are being taught that we can be the king. And then when we aren't the king, because there can only be one king, we get mad. And that's an issue that we're having right now. Because we were talking about like the Japanese culture where in specific, I was explaining World War II to my child, and we got to the kamikaze, or what we Americans misnomerly call the kamikaze, right? The suicide pilots.
As I was told in my history classes, they were always referred to as the suicide pilots in my history classes.
Okay. You are the king of your house.
Yeah.
But the kamikaze were divine wind. Kami is
Yeah.
God, and kaze is wind. So divine wind.
Mhm.
And it referred to an incident which happened in the 1600s where the Mongols tried to take Japan, and they kept getting blown back out to sea by big storms that kept rolling in before the Mongols could ever actually make landfall. And the Japanese wouldn't have been able to handle the Mongols had they come ashore. But since they never came ashore, and this happened like twice. So, it happened, and then they went back to China, then came back, and they're like, haha, we will do it again. And then another hurricane blew them out to sea.
Yeah.
And they were like, that's it. We're not messing with that. So they were taking it as a last ditch effort to win the war. And my kid said I would never voluntarily get in a plane and commit suicide. And I said, I totally appreciate that. And this is not exactly one of Japan's sterling moments. But on the flip side, the Japanese have a different culture about concentrating on the good of the people.
Mhm.
And those people were doing what they could for the good of the people, which to some degree we had with the Greatest Generation too, because they went off to war knowing that they would probably get killed, and stuff like that. So it's a different cultural shift, and I think we need a little bit. They need to be less put people in airplanes and run them into ships, and we need to be a little bit more people oriented or culture oriented as our protect the people around us sort of situation thought process, which we don't necessarily have.
Do you think, and this is just an opinion based off of the numerous films from the 80s through the 90s, early 2000s,
which are absolutely true.
Do you think we have actually sat here and gotten to the point where we have gotten to where technology has altered how we use our opinions and voices
I
to
absolutely
affect
do.
other people and given self-entitlement through this?
Maybe.
Because this is one of the things.
Something on that, whether it's because, like, as a broadcaster, we sort of are the king here. You know what I mean? You and I were the king.
Right.
Huh.
So, but like, we don't try to use our platform to tear people down.
No, of course not.
Intentionally. We do not do it intentionally. We will tear people down if they want us to. But
like picking on Brent?
or picking on Raph, but let's just okay, so like in the 80s there was a few movies that were designed for children, families, but whatnot, that stated technology as it advances may be detrimental. 90s happens, we get a few more tech movies that say the same message.
Right.
And now, mind you, I grew up where people thought computers were going to be a fad and they were just going to go away.
I've been thinking about kind of what you were saying, but I'll stand to say, once again, comparing our society to Japan's society, they aren't changing that fast.
No, they're not.
But
America changes fast. America changes fast, though.
Maybe, and maybe Japan will follow suit, but I'm not seeing the same entitlement effect out of Japan that we're getting here.
So this
and
goes
they are
back
just as addicted to social media as we are.
Okay, but this also goes back to how the families are run.
Maybe.
How people are raised.
Yeah.
And so even though, I have talked to some friends who grew up in Japan, and they said that their schooling, their parents still helped them with schooling. If they had a problem, they could always go to their parents. I grew up, if I tried to get help for school, I had to either wait for my mother to come home or I had to figure it out on my own. And I was usually more or less left to my own devices. I did not have a support structure that could help navigate certain things. And just stay with me, I'm getting somewhere.
I am.
Um, but also at the same time, our family unit has changed by me stating this. Over time, we have kids that are technically more or less like the parents are blaming the teachers for not teaching their child properly rather than a child being held responsible for not studying properly.
Though that is also true. We have
And,
made
like,
more than, we in this group, you and me, have made more than one snarks about modern math.
yeah,
I mean, and that's part of what I think we're doing societally is people don't understand what the new math is about, so they mock it. And once they do, we build a structure around that whereby people feel empowered to go in and yell at teachers for teaching their kids
right.
this modern math and stuff like that.
But the thing is what I was trying to get at is the breakdown of America's family unit. And I'm not trying to say this because I'm conservative. It's just something I've noticed over time. Is
Jerry's comment.
Yeah, I know.
Because that's actually one of my big gripes. As soon as mask mandates came out, we were like, cool, because frickin' we lived in Japan.
Yeah.
So we're like, we've got a box of masks right here. Bork.
Yeah.
Everybody gets a mask. I mean, we literally had a box of disposable masks sitting on the table. So it was like, well, we'll just get that out. You know, it wasn't a big deal. But it's because we'd spent so much time in Japan. We're like, yeah, okay, we got masks. We're cool.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to get at is the fact that America in general, in some other countries, not just America, but America in general is kind of like, it's still a young nation. It's never really found its voice. And the louder it seems to scream, the worse it seems to get.
To some degree, I'll agree with you on that. Every time you say we're still a young nation, I just remember Asuka and her comment about whenever we were going through Arvada. I said, look, Arvada is one of the oldest cities in Colorado. It was founded in 1860. And she goes, we have trash cans older than that.
Yeah.
She wasn't trying to be snarky, but she ended up being super snarky. And I was like, you do. You have castles that go back like 700 years. I get that.
Yeah.
But still, go with us here. We think it's cool.
Yeah. It's one of those things though that, like, the other thing is, and I hate to say this because this is kind of something, it's a leftover World War II thing that I don't like repeating very often. But basically what it is when the family unit was attacked, pretty much like how you raised your child was basically taken to a whole nother level. Like state-run, like watching of your child was done in Germany to a certain degree. And basically, if you didn't put your child in there, a lot of times you would have been forced to.
Well, and you had said something earlier that makes me think as well. Most everybody I knew in Japan had only one person working. The other person stayed home. So you were like, I remember having to wait for my mom to get home. And I'm like, yeah, so did I. Both my parents have been working all their lives. Whereas in Japan, one person makes enough money to cover all the bills.
Right.
Here, you need both parents to cover all the bills and somehow raise kids. And I think we've fostered a culture where kids are policed by people who are paid to police them, as opposed to the parents, because the parents have to make the money so that they can pay the people to police them.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, I get flack when I sit there and I say, like, I'll be the primary, like, my adoption process has me labeled the primary caregiving parent.
Yep.
And people don't realize, like, I work as a full-time artist. That is my job. I
Sure.
can work in caring for a child in that job.
Yeah.
Does my husband work from home? Yes. Will he be involved? Yes. Will he be primarily focused on the child when they come out for 6 weeks? Most likely. But will he go back to work? Yes.
Right. Well, and that's the TV was my, you know what, Jerry? You and me both, bro. You and me both. I was actually what my grandparents called a latchkey kid.
I was called that too.
Because like that was a term that they were using to describe us because mom worked all the time, dad worked all the time, so we just had keys to the house.
Yeah.
And we kept losing the
from
keys.
school.
Yeah, we kept losing the keys, so mom ultimately put one of those house lock boxes on the side of the house, like the ones. And so I remember that. She made the code was the first 3 letters of our last name, so that you could remember it easy because we were all very young. But it's a thing that you think about that, and I keep thinking about this and going, I think I'm starting to see the pattern here. Because what's going on is I have been able to stay here with my kid and stay home, but it's cost us.
Yeah.
It cost us a lot. My wife makes just enough to keep us above water, which means, like now, we just had an air conditioning unit die. So I guess we're just not going to sleep for the next however long until summer ends. Because there's nothing we can do. We don't have the extra $500 to go get a new air conditioning unit. That's just not a thing. So we just suffer, and everything progressively deteriorates. We've got two faucets that are broken, and they'll need to be replaced someday, but I don't know when. And really, we just both need to be working. But if we both work, then where does my kid go?
Right.
It's like I've got to put my kid somewhere. He can't just stay home all the time. So he's getting almost old enough that he could, and maybe in a year or two, it'll be a usable thing. But then by then he'll be 13. That's 13 years where somebody had to stay with that kid all the time before he was operable to stay home alone. And it's a thing that now that you start talking about this, I think about Asuka, my adopted kid. She's coming up on 16 now, and certainly she's self-reliant. But she's been riding the trains to school and back since she was 9. And it's because in Japan, that's a thing. And so, all of us freak out about the idea of putting her on public transport. But in Japan, you'll see squadrons of kids on these trains, and they all just clump together. The eldest kid watches the younger ones, and they're all assigned together in these little groups, and all of them are in uniform, and so you can tell they're all school kids, and you got to leave them alone, and and stuff like that. It's just like,
well, it's also a different mindset. Is in Japan, you're taught like the elder is supposed to look out for the younger,
right?
And in my situation, I have 7 siblings. In which I've dealt with my 2 older siblings having jealousy type feelings or resentment about having to watch us and not being able to live their life.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I remember at 6 years old with my sister 2 years old getting out a frying pan to make hamburgers because we were hungry and no one was at the house.
So I think part of this is probably that we now have pushed an awful lot of our people into a point where they have to choose between having enough money to live or raising a kid.
Or just having enough money to live and just being happy.
Right. Well, that's I think that's
that way.
That line a while back. I think we passed that line.
Let's just be realistic. I think the original point that made this go off from was the fact that we had a ton of movies that stated technology does not always mean that we're going to be great people.
Right.
And unfortunately, we're starting to see why all of these movies were really made. And I mean, you also have put shows like was it the Twilight Zone covered and other things like it
Mm-hmm.
covered this, and that was even before the 80s. So, but Bill has been waiting patiently. Messages from Bill.
Going back to the parts about like both parents needing to work and things like that, I think that goes back to, and this is not a knock on, but more of oftentimes good things have unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And so at some point in American history, we had a strong women's independence movement, and that has a whole ton of benefits to it. But something that we didn't think about at the time is things about like once women want to go and charge on in their own career paths, and they get with a guy who also wants to go off on his career path, and both are now working parents. We didn't often think about the psychological or sociological issues that might occur with kids and how we deal with that, because those things were really thought about back then. And then on top of that, we also have, because our economy is adaptable, it's malleable. So when both parents are working, we had more people with a lot more disposable income.
Yeah.
Well, the economy adapts to that and flows with it. That's why we get inflation and things like that. So as more people had more money, things started to inflate, meaning that single worker family homes now couldn't afford as much, forcing the partner to have to also work, which then further inflated things, which means now we all need to work in order to make this happen, because we didn't also consider that as well.
Right. Well, I have a feeling that economists were kind of warning us about this a while back, but everybody was taking it as it's like everything. The economists were saying, we probably don't want to do that. And everybody was taking that with, why are you being anti-woman?
Yeah.
Because the economists were saying, oh, this could be bad if we get both parents working all the time because the economy will adjust. And everybody took that to mean women should stay at home and be barefoot and pregnant. And they got offended, which rightfully so, that's an issue. However, you're right. They weren't. And that's another thing I think that we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where you talk about people think they heard something one way, get fixated on it. And even though somebody else is talking about something completely different, we end up putting legislation in place and everything like that, which doesn't address the problem. And instead addressed a symptom, and the problem still runs out of control. And so
lipstick on a pig.
And perhaps there are solutions to this, but we just never did think about them, and still don't. We're always living in the moment, right?
Yeah.
We don't think about mistakes that we've made. These are the problems we have now. How do we fix the problem?
Yeah, I don't know how you would ever fix an inflation thing. You need inflation to some degree, because a zero inflation economy means that you only buy groceries, which means that people who ever make anything that's a luxury item will never ever get money. So you need some inflation, but we keep getting this like gross inflation, and then we end up having to pull back down to here, and then come. You know what I mean? Like,
so you actually
back and forth.
Yeah, you actually want deflation, because deflation, as in the economic model, is where we clean things up. It's where companies that didn't have solid business logic or things like that weren't accounted correctly, they all go away. So you need that deflation to both lower prices, make rent affordable, mortgages affordable, etc. like that, clear out old debt, get rid of companies that just were zombie companies, they're often called, basically that weren't viable to begin with.
I'm allergic to this discussion. Thank you.
But then you can have inflation, because then inflation will occur in the places we want it to occur, where they're companies we liked, companies we supported. They had good business logic, they were successful, things like that.
And I kind of agree with the liberal side on the, lock things down for the things that you must have to survive. Food, shelter, things like that. That's a requirement to survive. Thank you. I kind of understand that might be the only, because I can't see any way of saying we're going to lock inflation at 1.2% and it will never ever go higher than that. I don't think that'll ever work because I think that would hamstring the economy. But I mean, like our housing, as you guys are learning, our housing market has gone insane. There's something really wrong about it. We just reappraised this house at $500,000. I bought it at 174 just 10 years ago.
It's
Yeah.
because we currently the thing is people aren't allowed to feel pain, right? We can't have a crash. People can't hurt. So what we will do instead is we will make sure that you never have the pain of seeing your home value decrease, but anyone that doesn't have a home will feel the pain of never being able to
Right.
afford it.
Somebody pays for it.
You know, at this point of the conversation, I just want to point out I feel like an Eloy, and I think we should move on.
I like economics and stuff like that. So
We can talk about economics over coffee somewhere along the line. What have you done this week, Pepper?
Sorry. My husband sat down in his chair and broke it.
okay, one more interruption. I don't want to buy a new seat if we're moving out of this place because then we have to move this. I'd rather throw it away and buy a new one when we get there.
That makes total sense, actually.
I'm
I'm not even remotely arguing with you. But we are going to laugh because
Yeah.
and we love you, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah,
And so there's the nature of the beast.
yeah. So I finished up some concept art for Atom Pump Jupiter.
I saw some of that. It looked good.
Yeah. I have been working on that one. So I'm working with an artist on an anthology. I found out my printer is not going to be very good with my part of the project, so now I'm trying to figure out on how I'm going to do it. I need to find a printer, a print shop or something that will be able to print on watercolor paper with waterproof ink at this point so that I can get the job done. I got new assignments from MetaZoo, which releases today, which is a trading card game that I've been working on and off with. And oh yeah, our inspection for the house that we're under contract with was yesterday.
Oh, good.
Everything's supposed to be.
And it passed.
Everything's mostly fine. Everything's mostly fine. We do have a few things that we have to actually change because of the adoption. We have a stair rail that basically has like
You could just walk right
basically a baby could walk right through it.
Right.
So that has to probably be fixed. But we took samples. Like yes, we've been mainly focused this week about the house and trying to get that all like situated so that we can move in, all that
Makes sense.
stuff. It is more north. It is in Loveland, Colorado. So my family found out it was in Loveland, and they were like, "Oh, well, that sounds like a wonderful place." And I was like, "Well, it's right next to the Rocky Mountain National Park, so I hope so." But yeah. Oh, and someone elected me for this thing with a group of our friends. That's happening on August 7th, I believe. That you are also going to be a part.
Yes, I elected you.
Yes.
So I drafted you, is what I did. I drafted you. Because it was like, they were like, can you think of any other people who should be involved in this? I'm like, Pepper. And they're like, oh yeah, Pepper. We should do that.
Yeah.
The good news is you got like endorsement from Colton, and you got endorsement from, and as soon as I said it, Gerard was like, "Oh crap, yeah, I should have involved Pepper to begin with." You know, like he just didn't think of it, but it was absolutely
Well,
right.
let's just put it this way. I'm usually not everyone's first thought. So
I don't know why. I mean, because like you're very fast and you make good stuff, and so I don't see any reason why. I mean, other than in this instance, you haven't been part of the Manga Taisen stuff. but that's mostly because you're not manga style. And we work the Sakura Festival every year, and that's what started this. Was we work the Sakura Festival, and they want us to promote manga. So we only picked from the Red Team Go group the people who are manga style, which makes total sense that wouldn't include you. So now Manga Tyson has started to grow out into all these other areas where they're doing all this other stuff, which doesn't require that we only promote Japanese manga. And so now that it's like eking out into all this other area, Gerard's like, who else should we involve? And I'm like, well, we should involve Brian. We should involve Pepper. We should involve, there's a lot of these people who are fast production artists. But then Brian got COVID, so it damaged his hands, so he's out. He may be out for a couple of years until...
Is he in the physical therapy?
Yeah, he's in physical therapy. Okay. And that's one of those just super painful things because he won't be able to draw. He can draw, but it's really rough and it takes forever. And his stuff kind of... It's looking, it looks kind of like Charles Schultz in his last years. It's shaky lines and stuff like that, and he's having real problems with control. Fine motor control.
I know what you're talking about with that. It's not a fun process to do.
No, he's gonna have to come back.
When they put me on, metformin for a while, and then I started getting neuropathy in my right arm from the medication itself. Right. Essentially what it was, like my hand like started doing weird stuff. Right. And I couldn't do a straight line during that time. It sucks. I really do feel for him. It really does suck. It's a very big blow to an artist to not be able to do what you love. So
yeah. The end result.
Can we reflect on that for a moment? I mean, think about it took decades to slowly and gradually gain the skills to become as talented as you are, to have that then taken away and then try to build that back up in a year or two. It's like an insurmountable mountain that you are then set to climb.
Well, and he's in a depression for it too.
I would be depressed.
Yeah, I gotta say, the moment that I got news that that's what happened to him, I switched from waiting for the next available Pfizer vaccine and just switched to whichever one I could get to. I was like, I don't even risk that. I don't even want to. That's not something I want to get involved with.
Yeah.
So that's why I got the Johnson & Johnson, but now I'm kind of worried that I'm going to need a booster on that one at some point. So there's that.
Well, I'm not going to go there. I have some very strong feelings about the people who are trying to claim that they were microchipped. So.
You're what?
So people are going, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Because you've talked about what you did. I haven't talked about what I did.
Yeah.
And
so what have you done? I want to see the star chart that you've been making.
I've been working on star charts. Check it. And now I finally have, these are actual star locations where they really do belong. And these are political boundaries for all of the different cultures that I've got going on. Earth is in this circle.
Mm-hmm. What's the big giant red mass that looks like a bloodshot?
It's what's left of Betelgeuse.
Oh, okay.
And this is the Betelgeuse light line, which is where the light of Betelgeuse's explosion is. And then this is the destruction line, where things are getting destroyed as the explosion goes outward. The beehive is actually above by a significant amount, but that doesn't mean that they're not at risk. They're at risk. Mm-hmm. But the light line's moving out at the speed of light. The explosion line's moving out at 1/4 the speed of light. So they've got another 150, 200 years before it starts to hit the bottom of the beehive. So for them, though, Betelgeuse looks like a nebula. For everybody on the other side of this red line, Betelgeuse looks like a star. So that's kind of cool. Also, because of the where Bellatrix and the Unity, this is Unity right here,
Mhm.
where Bellatrix and the Unity is, they're below, so that sphere hasn't hit them yet either, even though it looks like it has because this map is 2D.
Mhm.
I'll be making 3D versions now that I've got a 2D version of this map. But I have them going up each line. Like here's what it looks like when we're up on a different line. Here's all the, I'm writing all these notes in to remind myself stuff. But that's what the ultimate, this map looks like. I've gone all the way out to the galactic side. I'm going to open only the JPEGs because otherwise it's going to be a mess. So here is the map at the side arm when it finally loads. There we go. So here's where all of the Unity and the Beehive and everybody lives right here, and we move out to seeing the actual arm itself, so you can actually see that range. And then I have a galactic one too, which may or may not have gotten saved as a PSD. So we'll have to see here. I'm kind of looking to see now because they're all getting put in the same folder, which is markedly more complicated than it needs to be. Yeah, this master map, I'm not going to load it. We're having memory problems, so I'm not going to load it. This is the furthest out that I'm going to go at this point. However,
was good.
Everything is now accurate and where it's supposed to be. Here's the local area neighborhood with all the stars, and here is the political map that I've been working on getting for a while. The next map that I'll be building is a 3D version of this in Daz Studio, where I'm going to actually take all of the levels. This is called the wall right here. This purple thing. It's actually high density dust and clouds that we can't see very well because nothing lights it up. There's no stars to light it up. But it's there, this wall. We're inside a bubble of open air, open space inside this area where there's not a lot of dust. And it's because that probably about 5 billion years ago, there was a supernova that took out everything in this area. So it wiped out everything and made the Earth, or made the sun, somewhere along the line. So that's what Betelgeuse is doing right now, is clearing out a zone right through here, which it'll ultimately eat through all of this dust and everything like that, but not for another 20 million years, even after this story. So that's why the guys in the Beehive aren't that worried. They've got a few hundred years before even the bottom stars of the Beehive get involved in this stuff. And so just, it's not a thing. But this allows me now, the reason I was working so hard is now knowing where all of these stars are, I can now make some logical thought processes. This is the Hyades cluster, which is where the Commonwealth is, the bad guys in my story. And so I realized how close these two borders really are. And so that made it actually really cool, because now whatever is in this zone right here is contested. And I actually can have contested territory. The original maps that I made, they were like a zillion light years apart. And I was like, there's really no reason for these two to argue. But with the adjusted Gaia data, they moved closer together. And when they did, I was like, wow, there's like contested area. So there will be stars here that will be like, we're fighting over the star because we want this star's resources. And, well, we want it for the Commonwealth. Well, we want it for the Unity. And they're going to argue over it, which means that I've got more grit to go with this, which is what I was really after. So,
neutral zone?
Yeah, you've got a neutral zone between it. Exactly. We actually do. We have like this little neutral zone right here. Like this neutral zone.
All of a sudden, a bird of prey comes out of nowhere.
Right.
Wrong series, guy. Wrong series.
But there are all kinds of cool things that I'm getting out of this, like how close they are to this wall. Some of these stars are only like a handful of light years from the wall, which means that, like, and some of them, like this guy right back here, he's inside the wall. the other side.
Yeah.
And so in order to get through the wall, ships have to slow down quite a bit. So that's part of the reason why it's a big deal. You can't fly through the dust of this wall at high speeds. You have to slow down a lot. So it goes from taking hours to get between two star systems to taking weeks to get between two star systems.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal to go through the wall. And that's actually kind of one of those things that's crap duty they assign to the Navy. You're going through the wall. Aw, man. So
You piss off your CO.
yeah, you know right then that's what you're going to end up with, is you're going to end up going through the wall. And once you do go through the wall, then you're stuck with these duties that are star to star with many weeks of just flying at low speeds between them. Kind of the effect of having to travel from here to Virginia on a 35-mile-an-hour road. It would take weeks. so that's kind of the idea. The correct series of Star Wars. I don't know what that's about, but okay. Other than we're working Star Wars night. That's another thing. Boy, we're doing Star Wars night, you and me. We're out there. You and me, we're going to be sketching at full speed, trying to draw all the Star Wars characters, which is what they're going to want.
Which is going to be, like, very interesting because, like, I know I agreed to it, but, like, after the Rise of the Jedi, I don't know people.
What?
I don't know a lot of the looks of people in Star Wars.
Eh.
So I'm going to be, like, my biggest thing is going to be, like, having to look up, like, the character. I mean, Yoda I can do. No
This is
problem.
my best friend. I
Yoda,
do. Yeah,
Yoda
they're just gonna want a lot of Grogu. That's what's really gonna happen. They're just gonna want tons of Grogu pictures.
Grogu,
Yeah, Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda, yeah.
So as long as you've got that under control, you're fine.
Did they provide the paper for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like, I'm gonna bring my markers because I can go fast with markers. But yeah. They'll provide us with paper, and they'll provide us with.
Is it watercolor paper or color friendly or no?
Probably it's going to be the little, like, production cards. Thank you, Jerry. See you later. We're actually going to probably cut it short here because you have bagels to make. So
Yeah, I'm approaching my time limit.
Yep. So actually, I'm going to turn off screen share so we can go back to being you and me.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're probably going to give us those little production cards, drawing cards to work on. I don't know whether those are watercolor friendly. Probably not. So we'll have to see. Do you have alcohol markers?
I have black and white ones. That would work.
That probably worked just fine. They were actually saying don't even bother to bring, don't load up with too much stuff, was what they were saying.
Yeah, like I was like, my marker packet is like in a container, so I could easily just bring it. And then, but even though I'm going to a baseball game, like me having a side saddlebag is probably normal for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, it should be fine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry.
Yeah,
I
have a travel kit for watercolors if I really want to bring it, and I do have watercolor travel brushes.
Right.
So, like, if I really need to, I can bring it. So, there's that.
So, that works.
Bye, Jerry.
So, Jerry disappeared. That's all right.
Sorry.
He's getting more work going for him.
That's cool. All right.
So,
Okay. Was there anything else?
I think that's good. I think that that's all I've got so far. I think I'm going to make everybody happy because I'm finally just going to move on. I'm going to set my maps and then cook them which, that means that if any new information comes out, I'm not going to change it. So I feel like this is good enough to make my series off of. I've got the best data that I can at the moment. And so all of my maps will be accurate to today. And that's good enough. And when it changes in 30 years because they got a new satellite up there or whatever, I won't mess with it. Which I think will make you and my wife happy, because both of you are like, just stop already.
Dude, you need to get back to those pages.
Right? Pages need to be done.
Yeah, I need to get back to pages too, but first, I gotta go make some bagels. I'm
Yep.
at my time limit.
Cool. So
I will
that's
see
all we're
you
going to
later.
do today, guys. I'll see you later, Brent. Thank you for joining us. And we'll be here Monday. Well, I'll be here Monday doing Springs Monday like normal. So hope to see you guys all here. And so thank you for joining us. And as always, keep your eyes on the stars. Have good bagels. Bagel well. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm gonna have fun.
Computer, good night.